Good evening, families, and welcome to our first Family Friday of the summer. My name is Heather Deere, and I'm the Assistant Director of Parent and Family Programs here at William & Mary. Absolutely thrilled that you could join us this Friday. Our Family Friday series is designed to answer those most pressing questions that you have about the transition to William & Mary. And so I'll be bringing along some special guests with me all summer to help us answer some of those burning questions that you have about William & Mary, the student experience, and preparing your student for this transition to William & Mary. So this evening, we will be using the Q&A feature here in Zoom to ask questions. You'll find it at the bottom of your screen labeled Q&A. A box will pop up here and you can type in your question. Please feel free to go ahead and start submitting those questions. You can submit them throughout the presentation, and we'll get to those questions at the end of our short, very quick presentation, because we know that you have lots of really, really great questions for us this evening. My very first special guest, who I'm thrilled to be joining us, is the Director of Student Transition Engagement Programs, Miss Lauren Garrett. She is an alumni of William & Mary, and she is also very, very engaged with your students' transition to this really fabulous institution. I'm very grateful that she could be here with us this evening, and she is going to kick us off with our series talking about the Tribe Guide. So Lauren, welcome.
Thank you, Heather. It's so good to be here. And hello to all of our new Tribe families and friends. I saw through the chat that some of you have your students alongside you with for this evening's presentation, which is great. But know that these are going to be specifically geared towards family and the family experience, and how you will begin this transition as a support and resource for your student as they go through this journey here with us in Williamsburg moving forward. So a little bit about our office. Student Transition Engagement Programs is exactly what the name sounds like. We are going to be with your student every step of the way as they move into the university landscape, explore the many opportunities and resources available to them throughout their course of study, and then ultimately will be part of the group that helps them transition out of the university and into that wider world. Part of why we're designed the way we are is because we know that university transitions can be are filled with unknowns. And even though some of us may have had friends, family members, siblings, parents attend a university or have a college experience, things change. And so it's important for us to make sure that we have folks on campus who are knowledgeable, not just about how to navigate a university landscape, but also what change and what transition looks like in particular to students going through those processes at this exact moment in time. So from orientation to graduation, we're going to be with you. We stay very closely connected to parent and family programs, and we make sure that we are staying in touch with your student along the course of their 4 years as well. So what this means is that, again, they're going to see consistent ongoing communication from us, usually through their William & Mary student email address. And so very important, tribe trick number one, make sure that your student has set up their William & Mary student email address, because that's where we're going to be sending all of the nuts and bolts and need to do's over the course of the summer. And in fact, that's where the communications have been going thus far already. Secondly, it means that you're going to want to become familiar with the Tribe Guide, which is what today's session is all about. And then over the course of the summer, we're going to offer students an opportunity to meet up with one another around common interests. We're going to be partnering with parent and family programs to do some welcome events in early June, which hopefully folks have already put on their calendars. And then lastly, at least for this conversation, important for y'all to make note of orientation, which immediately precedes the start of the academic fall semester, and then is followed by our Find Your Experience program for incoming and new students at the university. So that's how you're going to hear about us during the course of these first, I would say, 6 to 9 months. And then beyond that time frame, there's a whole other series of programs and initiatives that you'll learn a little bit more about, especially through parent and family programs. Heather, why don't you share a little bit about what your office does and how we're connected?
For sure. So, like I mentioned earlier, I am the Assistant Director of Parent and Family Programs. And really, our entire mission is to help you, the families of our students, the supporters of our students, support them through this university journey. We want to make sure that you have all of the tools necessary to support your student as they navigate the experiences their first, second, third, fourth, and beyond years at William and Mary and through this university journey. It's important to recognize that this is going to be a transition for you as well. And so as you're reaching the end of maybe your student's senior year and you're reaching some of these milestones, you might have some bittersweet feelings about, we really hoped that they would make it to their high school graduation, but now that they're here, the thought of sending them away seems a little scary. And we want to make sure that you have everything at your disposal to help it feel a little bit less scary and that you're confident and comfortable taking on this new role in your student's life. And so from day one, starting a couple weeks ago when we sent you that first welcome email all the way through the commencement, Parent Family Programs will be here to help you stay connected at William and Mary so that you can help your students succeed and thrive. And so what does that mean for you as parents and families? You have already been getting some consistent ongoing communication from our office, and that will not stop throughout the summer. We want to make sure that you know about those deadlines so that you can support your student in completing tasks, that you know about news at the university, and that will continue throughout your 4 years with newsletters and email communication from our office. You may not have seen it yet, but there is also a checklist for you in the Tribe Guide. So on that Your Checklist page, you'll see a checklist just for parents and family members and the supporters of our students to help you along the way as well. You're invited to our welcome events like Lauren mentioned, and I know that some of you are already registered for those and excited. I'm sure we're excited as well. And you'll have your very own orientation program to help you get oriented to William and Mary and what are the support resources available to your student and you as you navigate this next chapter. Family Weekend, one of my favorite events on campus, is when we get to welcome you to see what life at William and Mary is all about. We're very much looking forward, if possible, to have this in person in the fall. So go ahead and save the date for that, and we'll share some more information about that a little bit later on. And also throughout your experience, you're going to get online events and community. So you may have already joined our parent and family Facebook group, which is a great way to begin connecting with peers, asking advice, getting those questions answered about, do I really need the twin Excel sheets? What do we need to pack? What do we not need to pack? That Facebook group is full of knowledge and years of searchable history. And so we're going to continue that throughout your students' experience so that you feel you have everything that you need at your disposal to support your student as they gain the independence that comes along with starting their university journey. And now I'm going to turn it over to Lauren. She's going to talk about the Tribe Guide. We're going to make this as brief as possible because I see we already have lots of questions and we want to spend a bulk of our time with you today answering those questions if possible. So Lauren, take it away.
Terrific. So again, make sure that you're utilizing the Q&A function of Zoom to ask any questions that you might have as we're chatting, just because I know the chat can get a little bit busy off to the side and we don't want to lose any of that information. So a little bit about the Tribe Guide. It is considered the one-stop online source for everything that your student needs to accomplish over the course of the upcoming months. Now, we recognize that some of these tasks may require additional assistance from family or parents, guardians. And so it's probably a good idea for you all to also bookmark the student checklists so that you can circle back and sometimes ask those prodding questions about where students are in the execution and delivery of some of these responsibilities. You will note that here we have made a distinct notation that it's the student's responsibility to complete a lot of these tasks. And part of why we say that is because this is the transition piece. It's reminding your students that entering the college, the university landscape is about them taking ownership of this journey. And that journey starts right now. For some of y'all, that will be a little bit easier than others. We know that there's a tendency to have very motivated students. And then we also know that with the end of the senior year, sometimes comes a little bit of a lack of motivation, sometimes known as senioritis. And so for some families that might require a little bit more prodding. For others, you might feel like you're out of the loop. And so the Tribe Guide is going to hopefully be that source of information that will keep everyone together and on pace. If there are new requirements added, such as a new training module or a new expectation based off of where the pandemic situation is going, things like that, we will make announcements not only in our communications, our email communications to students and families, but we will also update that Tribe Guide checklist, and we will make a note of that on that front page so that, again, you stay informed and you are able to stay on top of everything that needs to be done. So where can you find the Tribe Guide? The Tribe Guide is located off of the Student Transition Engagement website, and it has a direct access link, www.wm.edu/Tribe Guide. Off to the left, you'll see a variety of different topics that you can explore, everything from academics to housing to even campus resources. But really what we're going to focus on today is the Your Checklist portion of the website. Thanks, Heather, for throwing that in the chat. So a little bit about the Tribe Guide in terms of its contents. Want to highlight that there are 3 themes that you're really going to see throughout the course of the checklist itself. You're going to see practical items. So the things that we need every student to do, every student to complete in order to make sure that their transition into William & Mary is as seamless as possible. You're going to notice that there are going to be some topics where we're going to encourage students to be reflective about health and wellness, as well as share with us a little bit more about their health and wellness through immunizations, and then of course the insurance waiver and enrollment process, which usually includes a little bit of family involvement in that. And then lastly, we're going to focus on engagement through the Tribe Guide. So not just the welcomes and the meetups, but we're going to encourage students to start thinking about where do they want to get involved while they're here at William & Mary, and how they can stay in touch with others that maybe have a similar interest. Now, there are a few other things that are included in the Tribe Guide checklist, such as to review student accessibility services protocols, or to review financial aid updates, or to review student veteran status information. All of those review pages, while they may not necessarily be applicable to you or to your student's experience, they're helpful to sort of understand the breadth and depth of support and resources that we offer across the university community. And so while it might not necessarily be personally related to you at this moment in time, sometimes it's good information to sort of tuck back in your own brain should that ever arise. So for instance, student accessibility services, if your student maybe does not have a medical concern that might warrant air conditioning in a residence hall, or maybe does not have 504 or IEP accommodations currently within their high school studies, but perhaps is quite active and maybe during the course of their time at the university experiences a temporary medical situation, maybe they break an ankle or something like that. Student Accessibility Services is going to be the office that's going to support them through that transition and through those different needs. So you never know when some of these resources might pop up, and therefore we want you to have as much information as you need or as that we can provide early on in this journey so that you're prepared no matter where your 4 years may take you. The practical pieces I really want to hone in really quickly on before we get into our Q&A in just a few moments. These 4 practical pieces are really linchpins in the Tribe Guide. So the housing application is what, in a lot of cases, affirms for us that you are planning on joining us in the fall, because this is what's going to reserve your spot in the residence halls. It is a residential requirement that students live on campus their first 2 years at William & Mary. And even though that's a requirement, we still ask that they complete their housing application. And that's one of the first pieces due by May 31st. The second thing is our new student inventory. The new student inventory is what tells is the mechanism through which your student's going to tell us a little bit about themselves so that we can start proactively planning opportunities for engagement over the summer, but also workshops and initiatives over the course of the fall semester. And this is also the mechanism that matches our incoming new students with their pre-major faculty advisor. The third and fourth practical pieces here, college studies and the personal information questionnaire are all requirements in order for students to complete and finalize their fall registration for courses. College studies is an academic primer course. The personal information questionnaire is basically their emergency contact information and some of those personal security and safety measures that we want to make sure are in place. But those two pieces are required for all students to complete before they're actually able to register and finalize for classes. And so it's good for you all as families and supporters to know that these four practical pieces, if they're not done on time or in a timely manner, can perhaps prohibit some movement forward in their course of study and course of registration, even prior to their arrival on campus in August. So not to sound super scary or cause nerve-wrackingness, I'm sure that there's now a flurry of questions, but just want to draw the fact that those deadlines in a lot of cases, while we do have some flexibility, these four practical pieces do have a ripple effect that we want to make sure that folks get their information in a timely manner so that we're able to help everyone be successful as they move into the university environment. So with that, I think we're ready to move into some Q&A because I'm sure that now we're all a flurry in the Q&A function here. So Heather, I'm going to let you manage and let me know what I need to help with or what can I help with.
Fantastic. We do have lots of questions. So if you haven't taken a moment yet to submit your question using the Q&A feature, please do so. That really helps us keep track of what your question is, and you can see which questions have been answered. You will notice me typing, and I will be looking away from the camera because I am also managing the Q&A. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to move as quickly as we can to see if we can't get through as many of these questions as possible. Okay. Lauren, are you ready?
I'm always ready, Heather.
Okay. Are there triple rooms available for freshman students to request? My son and two of his future teammates are thinking about living together.
Great question. So when your student is completing their housing application, part of that application is going to ask about whether or not they have interest in rooming with someone specifically, or if they want to go through the random roommate process. If there is someone that your student is interested in living with, they're going to ask you to put in that person's identification number. And we need to make sure that it is a reciprocal match. Now, in the case of wanting one student to room with two other students, thereby creating a triple, they're going to want to put in at least one student's information there. And then I'm going to suggest that you actually have your student using their William & Mary email address, email living@wm.edu, and let Residence Life know that they are requesting specifically a triple. There are a few triples available within first year housing. We typically don't utilize them. We try to keep folks in doubles, but in the off chance that there is a triple that would like to form, Residence Life will do what they can to make that happen as space is available. So living@wm.edu would be the best source there once they've completed and submitted that application. And I would actually have them create a little bit of a triangle as they're submitting those roommate requests so that one requests the second requests the third, and the third loops back to the first, if that makes sense.
The next question, what steps should we be currently doing regarding housing for our incoming freshman daughter?
First step, make sure that she is logging in to complete that housing application form. If she doesn't necessarily have someone that she wants to live with, she's going to be asked to complete a lifestyle questionnaire. That questionnaire is pretty brief, and it will ask questions like, Are you a night owl? Are you an early bird? Do you keep your room messy or clean? And here's a good point, is that you want to encourage your student to answer these questions honestly about who they are and not who they want to be once they are in college. We all have dreams of keeping a perfectly clean room or going to bed at a reasonable hour, and sometimes that is just not in our nature. And so they need to make sure that they're honest as they're completing that lifestyle inventory or questionnaire. In the case, if a student is a little bit concerned about doing a random match through the housing system, I would encourage them to jump into the Class of 2025 Facebook group. We do have a number of threads where students are introducing themselves and asking if folks are interested in doing a pre-match for a roommate. And so that's always a nice opportunity for students who might want to get to know someone before they make some connections. And so whether they go with someone they meet through the Facebook group or they decide to go with a random match through the housing system, either way, there will be Residence Life staff who will support them as they navigate what it means to live with a roommate once they are on campus.
So regarding housing for our first year students, I have a multi-part question. We're going to knock some of these out pretty quickly.
Okay.
One, is residence required?
Yes. First and second year, there is a residency requirement.
Okay. When they fill out the housing application, is it first come, first served, or by the deadline?
No, it is by the deadline. We will not make placements until after that deadline.
If the student has severe allergies, do they need to fill out an accommodations request, or is that part of the housing application?
If they have severe allergies that require any sort of air conditioning or accommodation that might be considered ongoing medical concern, they need to consult with Student Accessibility Services and provide the appropriate documentation and paperwork so that Residence Life and Student Accessibility Services can work together to provide an appropriate living environment. The Student Accessibility Services access links in terms of their forms are available within the Tribe Guide checklist. And I think, in fact, it was to be reviewed either by May 12th or May 15th. So that one's coming up.
You are correct. This is kind of a me question, so I'll answer this one. I see lots of questions along the same vein of, are parents involved in the orientation program? Is there a parent portion to orientation? What is the date and time? And so we're a little TBD on date and time based on what guidance is going to be for the fall. However, I can say that there will be a parent and family orientation just for you. It will likely be a 1 or 2 day experience based on what move-in looks like and what the current health and safety guidelines allow us to do on campus. And so there will be a parent-specific portion of orientation, and we will share all of that communication with you via email as we have more information about it. But yes, you can look forward to your very own program this fall.
So a little bit, I'm just going to share a little bit more about living on campus living on campus your first and second year. We don't require, or we don't allow first and second year students to bring a car on campus those 2 years. And sometimes there are concerns about that, just in terms of transportation and commuting and just getting around Williamsburg. And we'll just share that most of the basic amenities that a incoming student will need are within walking distance of campus through a variety of different shopping areas. And then, of course, their student ID will allow them access to the local bus transport system. And that bus system goes not just sort of within the Williamsburg city limits, but will take them as far out to the outlets as well as out to Jamestown. And so the Williamsburg Area Transit Authority, WADA, has actually an app that's built into the William and Mary mobile app. And that William and Mary mobile app is a great resource for families to download. Again, it gives you an opportunity to engage your student in conversations about how they're preparing and thinking about their university experience, and can give you some insight into the student experience as it's happening.
Fantastic. How do students register for courses, and how do they know how to get in touch with an advisor, get the courses they want? What is the timeline for course selection?
All good things, all great questions. So remember that college studies academic course that I mentioned under the practical column of the Tribe Guide? Well, the college studies academic short course is what is required of all incoming students to complete in order to register for classes. That college studies course will be available in July, and it walks through how to register for classes. It reviews our college curriculum, and while working through that short course, all new students will be matched with a peer advisor with whom they can brainstorm and bounce ideas off regarding course selection and schedules for the fall. Upon completing the college studies Blackboard course, and again, information is found in the Tribe Guide checklist for both students and families around this short course. Upon completing that, students will have an opportunity to jump into our course registration platform. They'll be encouraged to register for 2 classes to get their feet wet, to sort of get an idea of what the semester might look like in terms of available courses and faculty availability. And then upon registering for those 2 classes, we're going to ask them to hold tight, because when they come on campus for orientation, they're actually going to meet with their pre-major faculty advisor, hopefully in person, fingers crossed. That's all a little bit dependent on what happens with COVID guidance and protocols moving forward. But regardless, they'll meet with their pre-major faculty advisor. And then after meeting with their pre-major faculty advisor, will complete course registration for the fall semester. So the Monday of orientation, new students will meet with their advisor. They'll wrap up fall semester schedules, and then they'll be able to purchase books and work through what their daily schedule might look like beginning that next Tuesday through the course of that first few weeks. So the pre-registration Blackboard course, just to make sure that folks are there, opens in June. It'll take a few hours to complete, and so it's good for students to log in early, make sure they have an idea of the tasks they're going to be required of them. But ultimately, they have about 2.5, 3 weeks to complete that before the registration period opens. And all that's listed in the Tribe Guide checklist.
Okay, I'm also typing some answers to questions, so be sure and check out that box and see if I've been able to answer your question as well. So I have some questions here about laptops, and is there a specific one that the university requires, and how do they learn more about the laptop ordering process?
So the university does not have a specific laptop that we endorse. We do have some general technical requirements that we advise that all students ensure that their laptop follow. And on the Tribe Guide checklist, and I'm pulling it up so that I can actually put in the link in the chat. We do have those recommendations listed. If you would like to order a laptop to start the academic year off fresh, you can order one that meets all of our requirements through the William & Mary bookstore. And there are an assortment of both Dell PC as well as Apple Macs that can fit these requirements depending on your student's preference. I will say that some academic programs do have some additional computer requirements that you're going to want to be mindful of. Specifically, I know that the School of Business recommends PC over Mac based off of some of their analytic requirements.
Fabulous. Thank you for answering that question. I know it's top of mind for a lot of you. Speaking of that immunization and health history information, where can they find forms, and how do they submit that information?
So the form is found by the student actually logging into the health portal. And so your student actually has to follow the link embedded within the Tribe Guide checklist to the online health portal. When they log in with their credentials, they should see a tab that's marked forms, and they'll need to download that and take it with them when they go to visit their medical professional. That's a portal where they're going to upload any forms and any immunization cards that may have been tracked by a doctor's office or a physician's office. And it's, as in most cases, it's sometimes better to include more information versus less. If you have questions about the health history and immunization forms, I would recommend reaching out directly to our health center professionals. They will not necessarily respond to William and Mary email because of the sensitive information that is typically provided in these conversations. And so it's always best to call. And I will put in the chat the health center's phone number.
Fabulous. I'm seeing lots of questions about what percentage of freshmen do random roommate versus they know who their roommate is. And I'm not sure if we have that information, but it seems like that's a top of mind concern. Does my student go with someone they know? Do they need to worry about finding someone they know? Or is it okay for them to go with somebody they don't know? So, Lauren, what is your best advice there?
My best advice is to encourage your student to be okay going with someone that they get matched with in the housing application lifestyle questionnaire process. If your student has met someone through the Facebook group, they seem to jive, they seem to get along well, and they've talked about particulars. I like to stay up late. You like to get up early. Ooh, how are we going to work through those sorts of things? If they've had those conversations and they're feeling pretty good, then I would say go ahead and do a reciprocal match. But I would say that most of our incoming students actually go random. And while I don't have a specific number, I tend to hear more positive experiences from students who have gone random than those who have selected to live with their best friend from high school or the random person they know from high school or from down the street. Because a lot of times students want to explore, they want to become, sometimes they want to branch out and try new things, and it can be a little bit difficult at times to be someone new when you're living with someone who perhaps knew you when. And that's not to say that all students go out and explore and try different things, but I think sometimes the university experience is when students try to become sort of their own person, and living with a random person and a random match sometimes allows them to feel like they're not necessarily being untrue to themselves and who they used to be. So it gives them a little bit more freedom to express, to try new things, and to explore a little bit more.
So I have a question really quick, because this is a really fabulous question to the person that asked. So we say the word random roommate. If we say the word random roommate, then why are we asking them to be very detailed on this questionnaire about whether they're clean, dirty, night owl, early bird, if it's, quote, random? Can you clarify the nuance there, Lauren?
So it's technically not a random match. Students use the words random because it's not someone that you have selected. So there's an algorithm that's used through the lifestyle questionnaire to match students based off of the responses that they've given to these very detailed questions. And so random insinuates the fact that it's not someone that you'd necessarily have known prior to the matching process. So not completely random in the sense that I've just pulled a number out of a hat, but random in the sense that it might not necessarily be someone who's already within your circle or sphere of influence.
Fantastic explanation. So I'm seeing a few questions that have arisen from our air conditioning conversation and student accessibility services. One, do all residence halls have air conditioning? Two, if I don't need to register for an accommodation, can I bring my own window unit to the residence hall?
So no, not all of our first year residence halls are air conditioned. And no, you cannot just bring your own air conditioning unit with you to install. So if you, while air conditioning is definitely a nicety within sort of the Williamsburg sphere, it's not necessarily a must-have. When you look at the timeframes of our academic year, there are a few warm weeks, there are a few on either side of the academic semester, but a good box fan in that window and some circulation and you'll be right as rain. So if you're really concerned about the air conditioning and there's a persistent ongoing medical need, then you definitely want to chat with student accessibility services about what options might exist for you. Now, if your student is placed in a residence hall that does not have an air conditioning, does not have internal air conditioning, central air AC, but they've been approved by Student Accessibility Services to have air conditioning, then the university will provide a window air conditioning unit for them in that space.
Lovely explanation. Thank you. I'm seeing lots of questions about when they need to submit their advanced placement test scores and other credit that may transfer to William and Mary and what that process looks like.
So if students have credits that they'd like to transfer in, you need to make either College Board, AP, IB, whomever the organizing institution aware of that to send the scores in. As part of their college studies, as part of the college studies Blackboard course, there will be an assignment for students to check their degree audit. And at that point in time, they'll be able to see what credits have transferred in, what have been applied to their course of study, and what's missing. And then that will help them determine who they need to reach out to and maybe what gaps need to be filled. And that typically happens in July.
For out-of-state families, how do they learn about transportation to and from campus to airports or to train stations? How that's new territory for some of us to navigate.
So for new students that are coming to us from farther distances away, typically typically 6 to 8 weeks prior to any break where a student may be leaving campus for an extended period of time, our Office of Parking and Transportation will actually work with our student government. Here on campus, we call it Student Assembly, but they'll work with our student government leadership to provide train airport shuttles as available. And again, this is all dependent on what's happening within pandemic situations. There is a rather robust parking and transportation website for families to take a look at that talks about both local transportation options in terms of private cars, but also talks a little bit about opportunities for shuttle service as well as local airports. A lot of our students who are coming from, I would say, the East Coast tend to rely on a Facebook group called Tribe Rides in order to find transportation up and down the coast. Especially as they sort of hit second semester on, Tribe Rides gets a little bit more active because students have realized that sometimes the train doesn't operate at the schedule that they like, or it gets filled rather quickly, or they realize that instead of flying, they might want to partake in a group endeavor up or down 95 or over 64 to 81, however the direction might go, and sort of have a memorable road trip versus getting into an airplane. Sometimes it's the joy of the experience versus the timeliness of the transportation that our students seem to be drawn towards. But between parking and transportation, student assembly, and of course, their emails from student transition engagement programs over the course of the semester, we will make sure that they are aware of options as well as timing of vacations and breaks in a very advanced, proactive manner, which will seem odd to some students because for them, in their mind's eye, fall break, Thanksgiving break, winter break, why are we talking about it when it's 6 to 8 weeks away? But we know that we have to make plans, and that's part of the transition into being an adult or adulting. As my student leaders like to say, we're adulting. They're learning how to adult, and this is part of that transition process for all of our students.
Does the university have medical health insurance coverage for students, or are students dependent upon their parents' medical health insurance?
The university does provide a health insurance plan, and that's part of the health insurance waiver or enrollment that is due by the end of July. So by July 31st, all students have to tell us if they're going to enroll into the university's health insurance plan or if they're going to waive the university's health plan and stay on a plan that currently exists associated either with parent, family, sibling, spouse, or other.
Okay, I have about 105 questions to sort through, so I'm trying to make sure I'm not doubling down on one that we've already covered before. And just as a clarifying statement, this session is being recorded. It is going to be posted online and sent to you via email so that you can review. That is going to take a few days to get up on our website. We are going to have other Family Friday sessions where we will delve into some of these topics a little bit more in depth, and that schedule will be sent to you via email in the next week or so. If you still have questions, because I doubt that Lauren and I are going to be able to get to 107 questions in the next 15 minutes, we are capable. I don't know if we're that capable. You can email us at families@wm.edu if you're a parent or family member, and we can help get you started in the right direction. Would definitely encourage that your students start doing some exploration of these topics, either through the Tribe Guide, which we've sounded a little bit like a broken record today, which was a little bit intentional, but all of the links within the Tribe Guide are going to take you to the information that explains what those requirements are and why those requirements are in place. So definitely be sure to review the Tribe Guide and go ahead and click through it. Take an hour, take 2 hours, sit down with your student if you need to, if you're feeling like you're a little out of the loop, and click on some of those links to better understand what those requirements are so that you see what resources are out there, what conversations you need to be having, appointments that need to be made. That's a really great way to sit down and feel prepared as you take on this next step. A question that I doubt is in the 109 questions that we now have, but I do want to cover before we end is, Lauren, is this a fast and furious, get this stuff done as soon as possible kind of checklist? Or is this something that we have the summer to worry about?
That's an excellent question. The checklist is actually set up so that you can see both the begin or available dates as well as deadline dates. Unfortunately, there are some hard and fast deadlines that need to be met throughout the course of the summer. And it goes back to some of those practical pieces that I chatted about in that sort of slide before we hit the Q&A portion. There are some pieces that we need to have in hand prior to August that will require a little bit of proactivity in completion. There are some things that are a little bit more fluid, and if a student doesn't necessarily complete it by the Tribe Guide checklist timeframe, no harm, no foul, but there are some things that do require immediate attention, and they have an asterisk by them. So if in the Tribe Guide, there's an asterisk by an item, that means that there is a ripple effect if it is not completed. So things like the housing application, which are due May 31st, the new student inventory, which is going to be due, it's sent to students' emails. So it's an individualized link. It'll be sent to student emails next week. And that's due the first week of June. College studies opens at the beginning of July. It closes before registration begins, summer registration begins. And then the personal information questionnaire is due in early August, late July, early August. There are going to be some pieces that you may not have answers to. And I was looking through some of the questions as Heather was talking. And there's some things like, we don't know the answer to this, or should we fill it out and then go back and edit? If your student doesn't have an answer to something and there's a hard deadline, go ahead and have your student complete it. And then when they have the information, upload the new information, or contact the office and say, hey, I have new information. How do I get that to you? We'd rather have partial information versus no information for some of these tasks. There are conversations I see in the chat, and Heather, we can sort of follow up with this afterwards if we need to. Questions about Monroe Scholars in terms of housing and course registration. They all follow along the same line as the typical student in terms of advising. Housing, Monroe Scholars have two options that are priority for them, either Monroe Hall or Willis Hall, but they don't have to live in either of those halls, and they can make a reference to that in their housing application. There are questions about credits and things of that nature. And a lot of these questions, I would say, a lot of these, what I'm hearing, some of these things aren't necessarily things that, while they might be top of mind for families and students, they're scheduled in to be addressed over the course of the summer, because right now our priority is making sure that we have your students housed. And we know that we have a spot for them on campus. So we're going to go off of basic needs. So our basic need is that we want to make sure we get students housed. And then we want to make sure that we're able to engage and support them in terms of resources and interests. And then we're going to start working on those academics and making sure that they're prepared to take on the academics at William & Mary, and they're feeling comfortable in that choice. And so I would encourage everyone to take a pause, print out the checklist, mark up your calendar, make your to-do list, and give yourself a little bit of grace. If a deadline falls in the middle of vacation, let us know. If a deadline falls in the middle of your student's graduation surprise or falls on the same day as the graduation party, you know what? Let us know. Because we want you to stay in the moment. We want you to have these moments with your students. There are going to be enough time. There's going to be some time for some serious talks. We're going to want you to talk about budgets and finances. We're going to want you to talk about, how do you do laundry? We want you to have those adulting conversations, but in some cases, it's going to have to happen on a timeline that's best for you and your student. And so your student may not necessarily be at the point of time to talk about some of these things right now, even though we know that these are the conversations that have to be addressed. It's okay to give a little space to wrap up the high school career and then start thinking about what's next for college. And that's purposefully why we don't introduce college studies in that academic Blackboard course until July, because July is when all of the questions about how many classes should they take? How many credits does a typical student take? Who do I need to send in for transcripts, official or unofficial? We're going to address those in July, because in a lot of cases, we don't necessarily have to have all the I's dotted and T's crossed in time for the start of classes. Those are all things that can be handled in the weeks in between, and can be handled with support from staff here at William & Mary.
It's a fantastic point, Lauren, because I think when we think about this session that we just had, we know that you and your students are very excited to come to William & Mary, and we're so thrilled to have them and you as part of our larger William & Mary family, but some of them haven't even graduated high school yet. And I think after a few years of working with parents and families of college students, I think you may miss some of these moments, some of these high school moments, the times with their friends, the times when they're home, the times when they're barely home because they're out with their friends doing all the things that they want to do before their senior year ends. And so the Tribe Guide checklist is designed in a way to help you get throughout the summer in a phased way so that you don't feel like it all has to be done right now. And so with 115 open questions, I know that you are anxious to get some answers to those questions and make sure that you're on top of your checklist and doing the things that you need to do, which tracks because your students got into William & Mary, and I'm sure the apple does not fall far from the tree, folks. So I know that you all want to make sure that you are on track. So all of those questions that you do have, you can email us at families@wm.edu. We will be more than happy to point you in the correct direction. Your student can begin communicating with Student Transition Engagement Programs, STEP, at wm.edu if they have some of these questions. And we're going to be very communicative throughout the summer, keeping you up to date on these deadlines, what the deadlines mean, and how to complete those. And so just want to say thank you again to Lauren. I still have 116 open questions, but we aren't going to be able to get to all of those this evening. So good news, there will be more Family Fridays. We'll delve into some of these topics a bit more. My email address, heather@wm.edu, is also open. Our phone is open. I'm happy to help you all through this next chapter in you and your family's life. It's very exciting. And I'm here to answer your questions, not just on Family Fridays, but every day of the business week, Monday through Friday. So, Lauren, thank you for joining us this evening. Any last words for our families?
I really appreciate that you all are so engaged and already thinking through all of these processes. And again, encourage you to reach out to families at wm.edu and of course, STEP at wm.edu. Happy to answer questions from families as well as students. And just want to remind folks to take a deep breath, and we're in this together. No matter where you are, no matter what's going on, we know there's a lot of information that's being thrown at you. We know that we're doing the ones throwing the information at you. And so we'll make sure that we get through this together. And if at any point in time you have questions or concerns, just reach out. We're always going to be around.
All right. And with that, we are going to end this evening. Hope you all have a fabulous, fabulous weekend. Be well, everyone.